The very essence of the mental game is this. The only reason an event matters is because we make it matter.
Welcome to the Mullins Farrier podcast, where I will sit down and converse with the superstars, the overachievers, the masters of our craft. Each episode will be a deep dive into their personal philosophies, their habits, the tools they use, and the secrets to not only their success, but overcoming failure as well.
First, find somebody you can mimic, then find somebody you can stand, and then try to focus on one style until you master that style.
So if you say I can't do something, well, you're absolutely right. But if you say you're going to, you're absolutely right with that too.
People say that you shouldn't define yourself by your work. That is not true.
You know what Dave Farley does when he's, lucky enough to be at the World Equestrian Games? I'm watching other people work.
Yeah.
I don't think we do that enough.
This podcast is for all of you out there who share my passion for the job and the desire to always improve. These interviews will put you in touch with the inner workings of the role models we all want to emulate. So let's get to it.
There's only so many hours in a day, and it's a matter of what you do with them.
Today I'm speaking with Cody Gregory. Kody has been one of my most influential teachers since I've been attending Heartland Horseshoeing School. We have this unusual dynamic where he is considerably younger than I am, yet I very much look up to him. Just like his father, he has become an inspiring role model for me. Kody trimmed his first pony and made his first shoe when he was 4, and shot his first horse all around when he was 8. He became the youngest certified farrier with the AFA at the age of 14 and the youngest CJF at the age of 15. Later, at the age of 19, he became an associate of the Worshipful Company of Farriers. An avid competitor, Kody won his first belt buckle at the age of 6. He was the alternate on the American Farriers team in 2012 and won first place in the International Alternates class in Stoneleigh that year. From 2013 to 2015, he earned a spot on the World Championship Blacksmith team, where they won the world title in 2015, and he was the WCB National Champion in 2014. Kody was also the top-placing American at the World Championship Blacksmith competition in 2013. Just as you will hear him say in the interview, Kody's brain doesn't work the same way as most. When he says that, it's not to be pretentious, it's just a fact. His ideas come fast and frequently, but if you can keep up with them, the insights you can gain through his philosophies on shoeing and learning are fruitful. I especially liked his concept of getting to the point that you are ready to ask the right question. I hope you learn as much as I did in this interview. So let's get to it. So I'm sitting here today with Cody Gregory, and I'd like to thank you, Kody, for taking the time to do this. It's an honor to be able to sit with you here today.
It's really an honor to be here with you, Brian. All the kind things you say about the people you're going to be interviewing, it's a huge honor to be sitting here across from you.
Thank you. You can see that you've achieved a lot for anybody in this business, especially somebody at such a young age. So my first question to you is, what is it that gives you this drive to achieve? Where does that come from?
I think the drive I have comes from a young age when my dad was practicing. I seen how hard he was working and to accomplish what he wanted. On top of that, when I was a young man, we used to rodeo. And what we were expected to do was rodeo. We were expected to practice as much as we could for a day. My schedule would be do my homework and I would practice the rest of the day. And if we wanted to succeed at it, I knew that that's what it would take. And that's kind of what set me on the way that it is. For me to have done well, I knew that what it took to practice. And that's probably the biggest sacrifice I had to make in the process of doing everything I've done.
Yeah, it's time. It all takes time, right?
All takes time, and, there's only so many hours in a day, and it's a matter of what you do with them. It used to be before I met my wife, I was a second half of the day kind of person. It was pretty abnormal for me to see 2 7s in a day, but I pretty well seen 2 2s every day. Now it's pretty lucky for me to see 2 9s, but I'm pretty likely to see 2 5s.
Gotcha. Besides your parents, who else was a mentor or helped you as you were coming up?
There is a huge number of people that helped me in my years of coming up. I would hate to start a list, and I'd be here for a long time to thank all the people that were kind enough to take me and teach me. And if I gave you a list and I forgot one, I'd feel awful terrible about that. So
That's understandable too. How would you come across these people? How would you meet them?
The horseshoeing industry, it's pretty small pond, isn't it? And it makes it really easy to meet these people, and they make offers, and you go to their house and you practice with them, and they teach you. And as a horseshoer, you could travel across this world on just a plane ticket to the country you wanted to get in. If you're willing to do just a little bit of work, or even if they don't like your work, they'll still take care of you. And that's just the horseshoeing industry. You could travel across this world on just plane tickets.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, as for my next question, you've always been someone who epitomizes confidence for me. So much so that I've often wondered if you ever even experienced doubt or worry. So I was just wondering, do you? And what is your secret to that confidence? Is it preparedness? Where does it come from?
That's a tough question for me. I don't think of myself as a real confident person. With that being said, I don't have too many things that make me worry or think that I won't accomplish something. The closest I come to struggling with anything, I've been really blessed with being able to work hard at something and be able to learn and get around it. And one thing that I think helps me with that is the fact that I'm willing to solve a problem. I see a lot of people that go out and they practice and they go to do something, and when it starts to go rough, they throw their arms in the air and call it a day. Getting angry, getting upset when you're out practicing, it does you no good. It slows you down. It hinders you in what you're trying to do. And I have a confidence that I can sort out most problems. The biggest struggle I've ever had was probably learning to land an airplane. That was probably the most frustrating thing. And I think part of the frustration was not being able to go and practice that and learn how. I didn't have a way of doing repetition to learn how to do that. And so it was just a matter of time with an instructor and as many landings as I could get for me to learn it.
Right. That makes sense. So over the years, you've taught me that the language you use is very important. I've learned not to say I can't when I come down to the school here. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate on your philosophy behind that and also explain, are there any words or phrases that you use or don't use for that reason?
So I touched a base on, I used to rodeo, and I never did anything spectacular in it, but I used to get lucky at a couple of them. And in the process of it, one of the most intelligent men I know is my dad, and I think we probably all like to say the same thing about our dad, but I like to think that he's pretty intelligent. And one of the things he did as he raised us was taught us a work ethic and a mental game. And we were rodeoing, and when I rodeoed, I used to do every event, ride bulls, team rope, calf rope, steer wrestle. You wouldn't have time to sulk in the mistake that he had just made. And Dad used to harp on us a mental game so that you would be able to compete at a very high level. That I would have to give a lot of credit to in the success I've had in the competitive world. We were competing, and there was a book that he had us read. I couldn't have been more than 11 or 12 when he had us read it. Book's name is called The Mental Edge, and it talked about self-fulfilling prophecies. Brian touched base on a self-fulfilling prophecy when he says not to use words I can't. There's a big difference when you're driving down the road between don't cross that yellow line and keep it between the lines. So when you say the words don't do something, the can't, won't, well, that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Even though you're telling yourself that, you're telling yourself to do it, even though it is the word can't and don't. And you will accomplish anything you say you're going to do. So if you say I can't do something, well, you're absolutely right. But if you say you're going to, you're absolutely right with that too. And that's one of the things that book touches on.
Yeah, your father actually mentioned that book to me and recommended it a few years ago, and it has made a big difference for me as well.
Yeah, and touch base on the confidence question. Inside of that, it talks about visualization and visualize yourself in the winner's circle. Visualize yourself after you've won the competition. You don't want to walk into a situation and know you've been beat. That's a waste of money and a waste of your time. If you practice hard enough, you will know that you have an opportunity to win it. But you have to prepare yourself, and you have to work harder than the other people. You know, right now, somewhere in this world is someone working harder, and someone working harder and working right now to get better than you. One of my driving forces used to be that you always talk to people, and I guess this might be the difference between. This might be the killer instinct. I call it the killer instinct, but I don't know what it really is. But it's the difference between the people that are being chased by the lion and the people chasing the lion. Somewhere out there is someone that is the best in the world. You'll talk to somebody and they'll say, this is a tough competition. And there's somebody that is the best. Well, you're like, well, that means that there is somebody is the best. You can look at it as like that's an unattainable goal. Or you will be the best. And that used to be a driving force for me.
That's a really inspirational concept. That's really neat. So I guess that leads into my next question, which was about how do you prepare for a certification or a competition? Do you have a routine that you follow, or a plan, or is it a dynamic process? Does it change with each one?
There's a man named James Fendler up in British Columbia, and I was blessed with the opportunity to go spend some time with him. And while I was at his place, I was practicing for convention. I couldn't have been 18, and at that point, I had a little bit of how fast can I smash this shoe up? I had it in my mind that how fast can I smash this shoe out, and didn't really care much about my quality, and hopefully it did good. Well, James was telling me a story. James, if you guys don't know him, he's been to Calgary numerous times, multiple time forging champion at Calgary, multiple time shoeing champion at Calgary, just not on the same year. Well, super handy dude. And he said he practiced for Calgary one year, and the judge that year had stayed the day at his place, and he said he had 250 shoes in a pile. Like he practiced his guts out. And the judge, he was pretty handy man in his own respect. He went to Calgary 3 times. First time reserve champion, second time world champion, third time he judged it. And so he was pretty handy man. And he looked at his shoe pile and just tore James' heart out. He says, "Why are you wasting your time practicing like that?" James is like, what do you mean by that? He says, "You've wasted all this time. There's not one shoe in this entire pile that's right. You know, if you can't build a winning shoe, there's no point in finishing."
Wow.
And so James told the story. He judged Stoneleigh one year, and he built a swelled heel shoe, and it was swelled all the way from the heel to the toe, even graduation, and there wasn't enough time in the class to build that shoe. And there was one man that accomplished that. That man's name was Richard Ellis. And he said, "Richard, there was no time in that class to accomplish that. How did you do that?" He says, "If you can't build a winning shoe, there's no point in finishing." And that man that judged Calgary and gave James that advice was Richard Ellis. So after that, I changed the way that I practice. I used to practice only time goes. You late to forge, you better be doing a time go. Well, after that, I realized something. If I can't build a winning shoe in my shop, there's no point in going to a contest. I went to every shoe that I built, I would rasp up. If it was a hammer finish shoe, I wouldn't, but if it was a rasp shoe, I rasped it up. Even the first one that you knew didn't turn out, I rasped it up. It may take me an hour and a half, 2 hours to build a shoe when I'm practicing. It doesn't matter to me. You'll always get done. You no matter what, you'll always get done. I spend a tremendous amount of time learning to build the shoe right, and I think that's a huge point on your eye. I think that you have, throughout your career, you have these moments that you plateau, or what you think is a plateau, but I don't think it is a plateau. As you're going along, your hands are always trying to catch up to what your eye can see, and your eye can only see so much in front of what your hands are capable of doing. So when you practice, you have to rasp your shoes up to the highest quality you can, make the most pretty shoe that you can with your hands so that your eye can learn more than your hands can do. And the plateau that I think people have is when their hands catch their eye. They're not a plateau. It's just their hands catch their eye, and they have to wait a little bit for their eye to get better than their hands. And in that period of time, it can be kind of growing pains, and people will get disheartened that they're not improving. I think you have two entities to improving. You have your hands and you have your eyes, and when they meet, that's the disheartening part.
So that's very interesting. So when you say about meeting your eye, do you mean that when you actually know what it is you're looking for? Like, you can see the perfect shoe and then have your hands follow in that?
Yeah, your hands will never be able to produce something that your eye can't see. So if your eye can't see parallel lines, if your eye can't see the shape, if your eye can't match the specimen, your hands will never be able to produce it. And the only way that you have to train you have to train your eye just like you train your hands. And the only way to train your eye is to continue to improve your work. Surround yourself by people doing better work. And your eye will get better, but your hands will meet your eye. And so you have to really concentrate and worry about what your eye is seeing in training.
I was going to ask you this question later, but I feel like this is a really good segue into it. You had a discussion in class last night, and it was something about asking the right questions. And I feel like this leads right into that. Could you explain that concept?
Absolutely. So I'm a person that likes to learn. Whenever I start feeling that I have become idle, I have to go learn something. I think that's what flying an airplane was for me. I was in a downtime between competing, and so I went and learned to fly an airplane. That's been an incredible thing, and there's always something. I try to wake up at 5 every morning so that I can sit down and read for 2 hours and learn. That's replaced my time for practice that I used to spend. For me, as I read a book or I'm learning something, I can only learn something after I've asked a question. And I think this is true for your conscious and your subconscious. And I see it a lot with the horseshoeing school. You'll do a demo, and the students will go out, and we let them work on it for a little bit. And what they're doing is they're processing what you told them, picking up questions to ask. Now, when they come back to watch the demo again, if you repeat the demo, now that they've asked a question, they're ready to hear the answer. But until you've asked a question, I don't think you're ready to hear the answer. And I find that true in my own learning. There are certain books that I don't have any context for, and I read them the first time, and it's just to hear the question that I need to ask the next time I read them. I think this is very true. I think, there's times that we go build a shoe, or we go do something, and we just do it. And we don't understand why our body was able to do something that it wasn't able to do an hour before. Your subconscious can think of an infinite number of things at a time, and your conscious can think of one thing. So as you watch something and you can't figure it out or not able to accomplish it, then your subconscious asks that question. And when you watch that demo again, your subconscious picks up on where that person was standing, the way that person was swinging their hammer. When you go back to do it, it just happens for you.
Yeah, I've actually witnessed that or experienced it myself. It's interesting how often, after watching the first demo, I think I got it. I think I already asked the right questions. And then once you go to the forge and attempt it, there are a lot of things that come up. Definitely the minutia of things that really catches you. So, no, that's a very interesting concept and very applicable. My next question would be, in a competition, if something goes askew for you, like if something goes wrong or you get a little off track, what do you do to recover? Do you have a plan beforehand for such instances, or what happens for you?
Absolutely. This was a huge turning point in my competitive career. The turning point would have been one of my trips to England, watching Stoneleigh, the competition over there. You watch some of the competitors over there, the best in the world, and they make a mistake. They don't sulk in it. Sulking does you no good at all. And I realized something, that if I made a mistake, sulked in it, thought about it for 5 minutes, trying to sort out what I was going to do, well, that was 5 minutes I wasted. If I just rolled on with it and made the best of it and figured out what I was going to do immediately, made an instant game plan, well, I saved myself 10 or 15 minutes instead of waiting for me to try to figure out what I was going to do. That was a huge turning point for me, no matter what happened, to know I was going to get done. If you're not going to make a winning shoe, then not worth finishing. So do whatever you can to make sure that that shoe accomplishes it. Don't sulk in it. Don't think about it twice. Just do it. Just fix your problem and roll on.
That makes total sense. We've often had conversations about your belief in always starting with fundamentals. And I think the greatest example of this for me is when you first got your CNC milling machine. For the first, I think it was a couple months. I'm not even sure.
Probably a little longer than that.
Okay, yeah. You were just learning the very basic programming to make it do movements and stuff, when all you had to do was put a pre-written program in and work it that way. You went right to the basics so that you could understand that machine right from its core, I feel. So could you explain that philosophy and how it applies to shoeing?
All of our minds work a little bit different. I know my mind doesn't work the same as a lot of other people's, and that happens a lot whenever I have conversation with people and they look at me like I smoke my breakfast. and it doesn't matter how many different directions I try to explain it. I know that my mind fires in just sometimes a lot slower than most, but it fires just on a different beat than some's. The fundamentals for me is you can't build a house unless you put a foundation under it. Well, you can, but you better have a good foundation. If you have a bad foundation, 10 years from now, that house starts to crumble. Looking back, one thing that would lead you to think a lot about fundamentals is before I was shoeing, the person that helped me build shoes when I was very young was a guy named Bob Marshall. We had Bob Marshall over to the house, I think 10 or 11, 12 years in a row. I don't even know. If you guys ever want to hear some funny stories, you need to get him to tell you some stories. Your ribs will be sore, but those were some pretty awesome years. And he's big time in the fundamentals. Shoe building's the same. If you don't have your toe right, you can't move on to the heel. And when I'm learning a shoe, if I'm getting ready for a contest and it's a shoe that I haven't built, I have no problem spending 2 days of practice learning to build that type of heel, or spending 2 days of practice figuring out that toe, or whatever it is that is the tricky thing of that shoe. I will go and learn that block of that shoe that I have not learned yet. That allows me to build on that. Once you have a way of building it, then you can start putting it into your system.
No, you have taught me that several times when I was working on heels. You just have me make a heel. I think it was 50 heels in an afternoon. And it's amazing how now that's just muscle memory for me.
Yeah, 50 heel checks is a magic number. I only know that because I build 4 punches, and I refuse to grind the heel check on the end of the handles, and I refuse to do anything but a heel check on the end of them. Which is, I don't know why, but so I was building a batch of 4 punches, and this was just a couple of years ago. I'd done a lot in competing and built a whole pile of horseshoes, and about 30 heel checks in, they were starting to become really nice, and I was starting to get a really good system. By the time I got to the 50th heel check, I had an absolute system. Right down to everything that I did, outside to center, flatten, inside, corner, flatten, inside, outside to center. And it's a system that I only accomplished because I did that last 20 after the 30 heel checks.
Great. So I know there was a period of time where you only ever used handmaids in your day-to-day practice. And I was just wondering what you felt were the benefits of that and how that was worth the trade-off in time.
I think that every horse that you shoe is an opportunity to practice. And if your goal is to do well at horseshoeing contests, then you need to spend every opportunity to get good at something. For me, the one thing that kind of hits home with that is there are people that can screw a seat into a truck in like 12 seconds. Right? And they can put 8 bolts in and they can screw a seat in the front seat of a Ford pickup in 12 seconds.
Right.
You'd make me try to take the seat out of a pickup and put it back in. I'm going to be 2 days doing it. Me shoe horses. But do you know why they're able to do that? That is the only thing that they're capable of doing. That's what they do. This truck rolls by, they put the 12 bolts in and the truck rolls on. We It takes 10,000 hours to become great at anything. And anytime that you shoe a horse that you're not trying to do the best job you can, you're wasting that opportunity to practice to get your 10,000 hours in. And to hit on that note of always using handmaids, I used to look at it a bit more like that than I do now. But every horse that I shod, I was trying to train my eye to be better. And the best job that I could do was a handmaid on every foot. That was my driving force in that period of my life, was to walk up and throat punch anybody I was competing against. And, you know, that's probably not the right way to say it.
It's the way you would say it.
It used to be my driving force to know that I was in the running to win the contest, and to accomplish that, I took advantage of every horse I shod as a practice horse, and that included making handmaids for every horse I shod.
That makes sense. I would agree. I applied that concept when I was practicing for my CJF run. I just figured that each horse that I worked on in my day-to-day was an opportunity to apply the things that you guys had taught me in preparation for it and just make it part of the routine, so that when I became under the gun and under a time limit, it all just fell into place because it was something I had repeated so many times throughout my day-to-day.
You know, it's a really humbling thing to get to listen to somebody like you, and it's a weird thing to hear somebody talking about your advice and how they took it, and it's really an honor to see how much you've improved through the time of that we've got to know you, Brian. It's really great to be visiting with you about this today.
Oh, thank you.
Don't blush so much, okay?
Can't help that. So this would lead perfectly into this question. What advice would you give someone just starting their career in this business?
When you're first starting out, you're going to not have very many horses to shoe, and take advantage of that opportunity. If you guys listen to anything on YouTube, Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about his rules of life, and there's 24 hours in a day, and he talks about how to use them. He says there's 6 hours to sleep. If you need 8 hours, I recommend that you sleep faster. And and at that point in time, if you can take advantage of not having many horses to shoe and take advantage of that and treat it like a work day, go out and build shoes as if it was a work day. And your skill will improve immensely and incredibly fast. There's a fellow by the name of Brent Powers that took that advice, and he was a journeyman within a year of coming to school. He was within a year of being at school. At day one, he was able to get his journeyman, and that's what he did. He woke up. It was, you go to work at 8. He went to a shop at 8, shod horses when he could, and enough to feed himself and buy bar stock. Became a really handy man in his own way. They take advantage of that work day and build shoes so you can improve the skill where you have the ability to improve your skill.
I remember you telling me that actual same advice, and I've passed that on to so many people, especially starting out, who are struggling with the fact that, like, the first thing they say is, I just don't have enough business, or the winter's coming and there's not enough to do. But there's always something you can do to improve yourself.
Absolutely.
Would you have different advice for somebody who's 5 years in or 10 years in to the business?
I'm still a believer that there's 24 hours in a day. If you need 8 hours of sleep, sleep faster. I think there's a lot of things, but I think it's easy for all of us to get in a rut, and ruts are where you do the same thing over and over again. Well, any of you guys know the Albert Einstein's definition of insanity? Do you know it, Brian?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, it's trying the same thing over and over again, expect a different result. Well, the people I see that get in that situation, they end up hating horseshoeing, and they end up in a slump. And you need to go out. You need to have goals. I think idleness and not having a goal is really bad for a human. We're meant to go and succeed and conquer and do things. And so 5 years out, you're at the perfect time. You're starting to get your business going. You've got enough money. When you're first starting out, you're just got enough money to buy bar stock, but not enough to actually go use it at all at a contest. 5 years out, there's nothing stopping you from going to every contest that you can. I know it probably feels like you just came out of starving to death and fighting over the pork and beans and licking the label, but you're gonna make it, and you can spend the money to go to contest and compete and take advantage of that opportunity. There's nothing that will improve your skill faster than that.
Good answer. On one of my visits down here, you showed me Coach's Eye and demonstrated to me how that could really improve my game at home. Is there any other technology, any apps or technology in general that you use in your day-to-day or that have helped you with your practice?
I'm trying to get away from technology. If I can, I'll get rid of the magic light box, but my wife hasn't okayed it yet. You know, the magic light box on that shows the pictures that move real fast. Yep. I've tried to take it out, but she keeps dragging it back in. But the Coach's Eye is a great app. Anytime that you can do a comparison between what you're doing and what you should be doing, that's awesome. And that's probably the extent of the technology I use.
That makes sense. With technology such as our smartphones, when you speak of how many hours you have in a day, I know it's pretty easy to get kind of suckered into spending a lot of time on a phone. We have this magic light box in our pocket now. How do you deal with that?
Recently, I've tried to limit my time on that. So when I walk into the door of the house, I try to set my phone on my windowsill where I charge it. And I try not to touch it until I leave the next day. I only have a short period of time to spend with my family, and I want to take advantage of that, and I don't want to be looking at a phone for it. It's easy to fall into that habit, and, you know, it's really easy to wake up in the morning and go, oh, I'm gonna read the news, and then before you know it, you've been on the phone for 40 minutes.
It's true.
And you haven't got any of your reading, you haven't done any of the things you expected to do. To limit that, I've tried to reduce my phone to setting it on the windowsill. And I'd say probably the biggest struggle I have is that I do things in extremes. So if I do something, I do it full-heartedly. And I tend to be the same on my phone. So it's not good business practice, but when I get in that mentality, I really struggle responding to messages and even touching my phone at all. But that's just me.
Yeah, it's a choice you have to make as far as how much time you want to devote to that. And having people have access to you 24 hours out of the day, it really does detract from your life or your quality of life.
I would say that I could probably give you advice on how to do well at a contest, but I'm probably not a good business practitioner. So
we'll save that for a later podcast.
Yeah, that'll be.
Now, Ed, one other thing that you touched on, and your father did too, so I asked him, if you need 8 hours to sleep faster, how many hours of sleep do you find you get in a night? What is your average?
This is something that I think happens to people. You can end up in a state of a haze, and you don't even know it. I think it can happen with drugs or alcohol or tobacco or any of it. I've never chewed tobacco, so I shouldn't say that, but I think it can happen pretty easily for drugs or alcohol or whatever it is. For me, it was lack of sleep. Before my wife came along, I ran on minimal sleep and just practiced and built horseshoes, and that's great. That was awesome. And the only downside to it was I was walking in a haze. If I sat down for 2 minutes, I'd fall asleep in the chair I was sitting in. Driving, when I left the horseshoeing school to come towards home, a 25-minute drive, I could only ever make it about 10 minutes in the trip before I fell asleep. So I used to sleep in the Jehovah's Witness parking lot. They never knocked on my window or nothing, but that was the routine every day. And Kirsty came along, and I started getting full nights of sleep, and my cognitive thought went up. And for me to function, a good 6 to 8 hours is what I try to accomplish. That being said, I try to do 4-hour sleep cycles. And if I get woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning and I can't sleep, I'll get up and go do something. Take advantage of that awakeness.
Oh, okay. And then you would do something.
Just start my day at 1.
Oh, really? And then go to bed earlier the next night, or
you go to bed at 9, whatever.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I found the same thing. I operated on very little sleep for a very long time, and when you do come out of that and do get the proper amount, it's amazing how that haze clears. I
had no idea the haze that I lived in. It was crazy. And if you came to horseshoeing school at that period of time and I was driving the van, you did the old Catholic spectacles, testicles, wallet, and watch every time you got in the van with me, because you knew I was about to fall asleep. And that's just Kirsty will tell you a story about driving to the airport, and she drove 20 miles from the passenger seat because they had the cruise control set, and I was sleeping, so...
Well, I'm glad you found a better routine for
Oh
that.
man, yeah, it's way better. And I get weird. I get really weird when I get sleepy. I'll say the weirdest things, and the next day you're like, I said that? That's a real weirdo, So.
Yeah, I think the subconscious kind of boils to the top and you don't have control over it.
It's like drinking. Nobody likes that guy.
Right. This portion of the podcast is called the Stratum Victoria. These are the short answer, surface stuff questions, but it's okay if the guest wants to go deeper. The Stratum Victoria is the outermost layer of the hoof wall. The thin layer of cells, also known as the hoof varnish or the stratum externum. Maybe you just learned a new word. I hope you learned some interesting facts about our guest too. Enjoy. First question, favorite book most gifted to others?
Nikola Tesla's autobiography.
Favorite brand of work boots?
Ariat. If they quit making those, there's going to be an uprising in the horseshoeing industry.
A favorite make of rasp?
Hellers.
Is there a particular model?
My favorite brand of rasp are going to be the Heller White Tang. I can get the feet flattest with that, but I also use a Save Edge finish rasp for finishing feet.
Okay. What is your dream Farrier rig?
I'm pretty simple. It don't matter what you give me. I shod for the longest time with an anvil bouncing around the bed of my truck like a bowling ball, so I'm pretty easy.
Your favorite rounding hammer?
Cody Gregory.
Yeah, there you go. Favorite type of bar stock to work with? Favorite section?
The stuff that you heat up and hit.
Favorite pastime after work?
Building horseshoes, flying. Flying's fun.
Favorite type of horse to work on?
Ones that stand.
Ideal number of horses to shoe all around in one day?
The ideal would be 4 to 5. They give you time to practice, but there's nothing funner than going in and just doing a whole whackload of horses.
What is the maximum number you've done in a day? This isn't normally in the questions, but
I had a client, and I think we would do 40 head in 2 days, and those would be. Let me see here. When I was young, I went with Daniel Bishop down in. I think we did 60 head in 3 days.
wow.
That run up there and that I was doing last year, it was 40 head, 12 were trims, and 12 were full sets. Yeah, I tried to get all the full sets done the first day.
Wow. And those were all handmaids, were they not?
Most of them, yeah. Whip and spur and old sea biscuit.
Your favorite anvil?
Round Horn Legend.
Your wife's birthday?
June 17th, 1992.
That there wasn't much of a hesitation there.
No, not too much. If you want to ask me my anniversary, it's on the back of my hand. She made sure I wouldn't forget that.
Your favorite breed of dog?
Red Heelers.
Preferred social media platform?
Sitting on my windowsill.
What do you use as your planner or agenda?
Just the normal iPhone calendar.
Favorite method of soothing aches and pains?
Try-acting. Yeah, you try acting like a man. In all honesty, so Dad was talking about it. He took 7 aspirin last year, and I bet I didn't take that many.
Yeah, so you just avoid it as much as possible.
Yeah, I don't like pain pills.
Work through it. Favorite brand of jeans?
Cheap.
Do you work out?
No, I don't, but I know that's coming. It's going to sneak up and bite me. I'm going to have to soon.
And do you meditate?
Just pray.
And what would you have been if not a farrier?
A pilot.
Well, thank you very much, Kody. I have to say this has been great. I've learned a lot more, even after hanging out with you for a cumulative 5 years. This has been incredible. I really appreciate it. Is this as good
as the night is when you missed your airplane?
That is another story for another day. Before we finish this episode, I wanted to say a few words about the Hammered series on YouTube. My friends at Heartland Horseshoeing School are kicking it new school and have started filming their students at work, as well as releasing how-to videos for forging and shoeing techniques by Chris and Kody. Every Sunday, an episode of Hammered in the Heartland is released, and I have to tell you, it's addictive. Dr. Love, also known as Jake Krause, the genius behind the videos, keeps you hooked with the ongoing stories of the students, the constant running jokes, and the day-to-day struggles of learning on some of the toughest horses, donkeys, and mules of the Midwest. I have links on my page to the episodes. Give them a try. Even better, sign up for a course, and maybe you can become one of the Hammered in the Heartland stars. Well, that's all for now. Until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other out there. Thank you for listening.